On the line with us right now is Russ Choma. Russ is an investigative reporter with the Washington Bureau of Mother Jones, covering money and politics and influence. MotherJones.com, of course. RUSSCHOMA on Twitter. And Russ, am I saying your name right? And welcome to the program.
You are, and thank you very much for having me.
So I understand you've been sitting in the courtroom with Donald Trump and Letitia James.
Yes, it's been a very exciting morning.
So tell us about it.
Well, it's the first time Trump is on the stand doing a full testimony. He briefly took the stand earlier in the trial to talk about a limited gag order, but today's his actual testimony. And the judge came ready for him, and he's also had some things to say to the judge.
For example?
He said the judge is a fraud. He said the real fraud is the judge.
He just came right out and said that.
He did.
How did the judge react?
Well, the judge made it very clear at the start of his testimony that he was not going to accept a lot of pontificating and speech-making. And Trump, as soon as he started to ramble, the judge cut him off. There's been a number of times where the judge has just said, that's stricken, has nothing to do with it. You know, they ask him about a Scottish golf course valuation, and he starts talking about Aberdeen, Scotland, and the oil economy, and the judge just says, nope, we're not talking about that.
Oh, interesting.
But the Letitia James attorney who's doing the questioning, I think, is enjoying some of his rambling answers because they have a lot of information. I mean, several times he said, no, I don't want that stricken, even though it was something that was very off topic. So the judge warned him a couple times and even threatened to dismiss him from the stand and say, I'm just going to count it as a negative inference, basically meaning I'll just assume that you not testifying is a negative and you're not testifying because you're not answering the questions. But after a break this morning, the judge backed off a little bit, I think because the prosecutor or the AG's office wasn't complaining. So let him just ramble a bit more. And he's basically admitted that he played a role in adjusting the valuations of his property, which is what the trial is about at its heart. Interesting.
So the prosecution seems to be now following a give them all the rope they want strategy?
Yeah, I mean, they let him talk. And, you know, after he made this, he sort of went on this very, very emotional, his voice got very high. And he said, you know, he's a fraud. And he's been totally convinced by that political hack and pointed at Letitia James and sort of went off on them. And when he finished, James's attorney, this guy named Kevin Williams, he said, are you done? and when Trump said, yes, I'm done, then he's, okay, well, next question is, blah, blah, blah. So they're not engaging him on it. But the judge is clearly over it. He's in a very bad mood.
Interesting.
And he's asked Trump's attorneys to control his client and has suggested that they take some time to talk to Trump about how to properly answer questions. But like I said, James's office seems to be happy to let him go. So later on in the morning, they let him go.
I understand that Letitia James's New York Attorney General Letitia James's office is in a building literally next door to 40 Wall Street. And
right. Well, one of his little spiels was she doesn't even know what 40 Wall Street is. And,
right.
You know, she tweeted at lunchtime, well, actually, I can see it from my office.
Exactly. So this doesn't sound good for Trump. It sounds to me like, and I'm curious your personal opinion on this, Russ, as a reporter and an observer of this. It sounds to me like Trump has made the decision that if he can get good publicity out of this, it doesn't matter what happens with the trial, because if he can become president, he can reverse everything. What do you think?
I think that may be true, and I think he is playing this as much as he can for PR value. You know, at one point this morning, when the judge was complaining he was talking too much, his attorney said, well, you know, we should hear what he has to say. He's kind of a big deal in this case. And the judge said, well, I'm not here to hear what he has to say. He's here to answer questions, which, you know, is kind of a subtle difference in things, but an important difference. And at lunchtime, he shot out a message on Truth Social with that quote from the judge, I don't want to hear what Trump has to say, left off the second part of it. And so, I mean, that's 100%, you know, sort of a PR move. And I think he's very happy to have the judge say things like that. But it definitely doesn't portray how his testimony is actually going.
How might this is a bench trial? This is not a jury trial. There's not 12 people here that Trump has got to convince. If he's going to win, he's got to convince the judge. And conventional wisdom would suggest that you don't win a bench trial by pissing off the judge. How badly could this damage Donald Trump? And could the $250 million damages that Letitia James is looking for, or it's not even damages, clawing back the profit that he illegally made, the money that banks would have made with higher interest rates and insurance companies would have made with higher premiums had they not been subject to his lies. and of course, higher taxes that he would have paid had he not lied. Could he end up paying more than $250 million?
I think so. I think there's going to be more testimony. There was testimony the other day about how they determined the bank interest, and that was $168 million. And so I think there'll be some more testimony determining that. And James has always said $250 million was a placeholder, so it could be more. But you're right; it is not a jury trial. But the judge has already decided that he's committed fraud. That part is decided. Now it's just a question of how much. So that's the other reason why all this is not particularly helpful for Trump in a legal sense, is because he's still arguing that the fraud wasn't committed, and the judge has already determined it has.
Well, and fraud is not just wrong in a civil sense. It's also a crime. We're talking crimes that are both federal and state crimes for which Trump is not being prosecuted. Do you think that there's a possibility that some of his testimony here and some of the testimony of his family might cause them down the road to end up in court on facing criminal charges? Or are there statutes of limitations that have expired or other things that might prevent that?
There are some, but there's also some stuff that, some of the stuff we're discussing went on as recently as last year. So some of it is still sort of very much ongoing. I think that if they had a very good criminal case, they would have brought it already. The civil obviously is like a very different standard and different requirements to prove it, and that was a lot easier for them to go to. And apparently they got the judge to agree with them fairly easily. So, but right. I think that is one of the reasons that the AG's office is happy to let him ramble. It's because who knows what he'll say. Yeah,
and Alvin Bragg has a criminal case against Donald Trump that almost never gets mentioned. But isn't there some interface or overlap between that and this trial?
I think there is, in the sense that Michael Cohen testified, but his testimony in this case wasn't really related to that. But I think just in general about how the operation was run, it was a top-down operation where it's been clear like he made the decisions, and people did things at his direction. And so I think that's the case in there, is the question of how involved was he? And based on what we've heard here, he makes the decision. Other people may have done some of the minutia work, but he was the one who made the decisions. And that's what he said today. He said, I looked at things and I approved them. Yeah.
So we're gonna hit a break here in about 40 seconds. But what I'm hearing is, Trump's saying no, my accountants and his family saying no, my accountants did this. The accountants are saying no. We got the information from the Trump organization. The Trump organization people are saying Trump made us do it. Where does the buck stop?
Well, I think that one thing, he did contradict some of the documents today. His documents he submitted said where it came from. It came from him. And he was saying, it didn't come from me. But no, that's what the documents that he submitted to banks said. So I think that even if his employees, Alan Weisselberg testified already, and he said, I used to go into Trump's office and ask him, and he used to give me comments and approval. So it ultimately goes back to the person making decisions.
Interesting. So, in other words, Donald Trump himself.
Right.
Yeah. This is fascinating. So, what do you expect this afternoon?
I think more of the same. I think more Trump being argumentative, and the AG's office letting him go just to see what he says. Yeah. It's a fascinating time. Russ Choma, investigative reporter with the Washington Bureau of Mother Jones, motherjones.com, RUSSCHOMA on Twitter, or on X, whatever you call it. Anyhow. Russ, thanks so much for dropping by. It's great talking with you. Thank you.
Appreciate the information.